The landscape here at Stirley Farm is a real mix, so we like to refer it to as a mosaic landscape. We have big fields that are just grassland that we use for hay cutting. We've also got fields that are quite shrubby, and we've got random trees that grow in. That's excellent for animals that want to hide and deer and things like that. We've also got landscape that really needs some restoration. So we've got one field in particular that used to be a rubbish tip, and over the years it's managed to restore, but we do have that rubbish problem underneath the surface. So we've got a real unique landscape. Some of it has been grazed for years and centuries for dairy cattle. Some of it's just been misused and hasn't had any restoration whatsoever. So we've got a real mix of woodland, grassland and mosaic and scrubland. Stirley's changed quite a lot over the last 300 years. So when we took it on here, it used to be a dairy farm, and it was used as a real small family scale farm holding. So the people who owned it here used to deliver locally, and it was very much family orientated, community based even then. That's when the Yorkshire Wildlife Trust were interested in it, and the local council were looking for something to do with it. And eventually over time we've looked to restore it back to its former glory of a mixed landscape, but the ground is quite poor. The site here generally has been mixed farming all the way along. It's been used for its rivers and its big open fields and things like that. So the type of restoration activities that we do here at Stirley, in terms of all the environmental stuff we do and the building things that we do, the environmental stuff that we do is obviously we took it over from a disused farm. So the dry stone walls had fell into disrepair. The fields didn't have any fencing if we wanted to run a grazing programme. So initially when we took it on, it started as the bare bone basics. So we started repairing the dry stone walls, we started putting in stock fencing so that we could build in a grazing programme. We restore the grassland to meadows and fields. We're hoping to grow a few wildflower meadows and things like that. We need the nutrients from the cattle for those. In terms of the buildings and the space that we've got here, we built a cattle barn to hold them, and we'll do vet checks on them, we'll do feeding them in here if the land gets too wet in winter and all that sort of thing. So we've got our office spaces here as well. That's an old converted barn. So there was barns here that were used to house the dairy cattle. We've converted all those into an office space. We've converted it into a home for our trainees. So we run a community trainee programme and volunteering programme. So anyone that needs to live on site, they can stay here. And then we also run engagement and education activities from another one of our converted barns. And we do that for schools and community groups as well. It's also an eco barn, so it's solar panelled. It filters the air inside, so it's run by a boiler that you would find in your house, and it barely takes any power at all through the year. So we've really tried to build in the eco side of new buildings, develop the environmental side through our grazing programme, and then run community programmes from that as well as we build it up. We've still got a long way to go, but we're getting there, and there's lots more restoration that we can be doing as well. I see nature and culture combining here really quite well here at Stirley. We've got a huge opportunity to engage the public and the local community with a regeneration process. So we want to get them involved with doing the fencing, doing the dry stone walling, helping us to plant new trees and shrubs, which is what we're all about here at Stirley. We want to create a network for wildlife. Another thing that we want to do as well is make sure that between our fields we can connect the landscape a little bit more. So it's quite fragmented at the minute, so we're wanting to develop a mosaic of land where we've got shrubs, we've got native trees that we can plant to create more of a wooded area, and all that we want to involve the public with. So we want to make sure that they're part of that process and they understand it. Quite often what happens, we find, is restoration work is done and then we tell people about what we've done. What we want to do here at Stirley is involve them along the whole way so that they get a more of an understanding of what it takes to develop an area for wildlife, what wildlife really needs, and get them involved from the bare basics. And we have that opportunity here at Stirley. So we've got a blank canvas, it's ready to be restored. We're going to bring the public in to help join us with all that and hopefully engage them and teach them about restoration for wildlife along the way. But in terms of the history here at Stirley for its flora and fauna, it's actually very, very weak. Because we're a semi-urban farm, and we're right next to a main city, in terms of wildlife species, you can expect your garden birds. We've got foxes, hedgehogs, deer, as I mentioned, roe deer, and we've got lots of buzzards that fly around as well. So our aim really here is to maintain that level of wildlife and increase it and allow those species that this land is ideal for to make sure that they're comfortable and they've got a space. So yeah, we want to make sure that the kestrels can come back, and they're here as well. A really diverse range of species, almost what you would want to expect on an urban, semi-urban farmland and landscape. But in terms of history, unfortunately, it is quite weak here at Stirley because it did used to be used for a dairy farm. There wasn't much of that interest here in terms of its wildlife species. So who knows, we could get something really exciting crop up that we never expected, and that would be the best way forward for us, I think. At Stirley, we run volunteering programmes and have been doing for a very long time. So we set up here about 10 years ago, and one of the aims was to get local people involved in growing, in doing restoration, all that sort of thing. So we have volunteers here who look after our gardens, and we grow vegetables. The vegetables are mainly used for our school groups that we have on board, and we have a really engaging education programme where schools come along and we'll show them literally where their food grows and how it grows. They'll come into the gardens, dig up their own food, they'll wash it, they'll clean it, we'll teach them how to prep the food, and then they cook it and they eat it at the end. And this is what this is all about. So we go from teaching the local community how to grow food to then teaching children where their food comes from, and it's a really engaging process. And we grow lots here. We try and grow every single vegetable that we can get our hands on. The soil's a little bit clayey here, so it can't grow every vegetable, but we really do try. We've also got our local special educational needs schools, and we help them with their allotments. They have their own. We help them with their vegetable growing, and at the end of the year with us, they come once a week to volunteer with us, and at the end of the year they get to cook and eat their veg that they've grown with us, which is a really, really good programme. The schools absolutely love it, and the kids do too. The inspiration for rewilding here at Stirley really came from the national wildlife crisis essentially that we're having, in that our nature networks, our woodlands are all broken up across the UK, and we did used to be a lot more wooded than what we are now across the nation. And it's really through data that we've been provided that there's far much habitat loss going on. We're losing our local birds, our really basic wildlife, and we wanted to do something about that. And the way that we can do that is essentially educating people about rewilding. And I think sometimes rewilding is thought of as a let's just let everything loose and let's let just everything go, and it's not quite that. It's about a managed landscape where we allow certain areas to develop more than others. You can't just let an area of land go, you do have to manage it. So it's about trying to find areas at Stirley that we allow brambles to develop, we allow scrubland to grow and seed itself, then while also maintaining the land for other aspects of wildlife as well. So making sure that when we plant trees, it's going to create that network that we need. They're planted in certain areas that are going to be beneficial to wildlife. There's no point just putting trees down everywhere and expecting the best to happen. So we've got a real plan about how we make sure our woodlands around this site are connected better for wildlife. And it has come from that real need from the wildlife to say we need more diversity, and we've got plenty of land here that we can change and develop to do that for them. So, and educating as well. I think we really want to educate here, and because we're so local to the city, we've got that real purpose that we can help people learn more about rewilding and what it actually means. So the type of rewilding activities we've got planned for the future, we've got big tree planting that we want to achieve and put plenty of trees in there, but we don't just want to plant trees, we want to have a mosaic. So we want some hedgerows. So we're going to develop some hedgerows and do some hedge laying courses for people, so that'll get them involved. We really want to do scrubland, so any of our smaller low laying trees and shrubs and things like that. And then also bringing in our native species and making sure that we've got oak, we've got beech and things like that we're planting. That's one of the main areas. Another thing as well is actually developing the dry stone walling. So developing that, so for species that live in cracks and crannies and things like that, they've got somewhere to stay safe and hide. We don't just want to plant trees, we don't want to just do hay meadows, we don't just want to create ponds, we want to do the whole thing so that we eventually have every kind of mosaic landscape we can here, and really show people the different types of rewilding that they can do. So it's not just one thing, we've got multiple aspects of that, and almost be an education centre for what rewilding means and what it means to rewild. I think visitors really appreciate coming to Stirley for its relaxation. So we've got lots of walking routes that meander through our fields, so they can bring their families, they can come as a couple and they can walk through the site. Also, I think we're quite a close-knit community, so we really want to get to know our visitors, and we don't just bring them through the door, and there's lots of them. So we keep it small, we keep it intimate, we really get to know them. We really want to understand what they know about wildlife and how we can develop that. So if we feel we're in an activity and a child is leading the questions, we'll go with that child or that family on those questions. I think as well we have a lot of school children that come with us and they bring back their families. So for some people they're actually making memories here, and they remember coming with their school when they were younger, maybe 5 or 6, and they come a couple of years later to an event, a big event or an activity we're doing, and they really remember us and they remember the people as well. So we really want to engage with them on that emotional level, which I think people appreciate, and also help them connect to wildlife that isn't scary. So we try and make it accessible to everybody. So some of the things that we really want to engage people here with at Stirley is taking them on that journey. So some of the activities we do, we start at nature tots. So we bring in little toddlers and babies and we get them involved with playing outside, splashing in puddles. We might have a specific creature that we focus on that time, so a certain butterfly, and we'll do paintings and drawings with them then. We then develop that connection with them, so we have schools coming right from the ages of 4 up to the ages of 12, and we bring them along then. And we have wild clubs as well, so once they start getting into the teenage years, we'll be more intricate with them. So we'll do camera trapping, we'll do moth traps and things like that. So really developing on that initial knowledge that we started with them when they were young, and making sure that they get the full experience as they grow older with us. And we have families that come back and have those memories, or they'll say, oh, I remember you taught me about that butterfly that only comes every couple of years, and we can then go into more detail about them. So it's really creating that journey from the bare basics right through to almost being wildlife experts. So we think here that rewilding and community are actually very closely linked. One of the things that we find in our local community is that nature really helps with mental health and well-being and all that aspect, and rewilding is going back to the basics, where you get outside, you're managing landscapes for nature. It's really allowing people to connect at that raw level with nature. It's not planned, it's not formatted in an educational way. It's developing an area that is natural to wildlife, but we don't necessarily think about it. So I think within our local community, getting them involved with tree planting, getting them involved with creating scrub and that sort of landscape, it's benefiting them for their health. They're getting outside, they're getting that fresh feel, and also it's making them understand about what nature really needs and what wildlife really needs from us as people. And I think we were in such a unique situation here where the neighbours are literally on our doorstep and they can walk to the farm, they can walk to us, and we have that really close connection. So the real wilding aspect is the same as connecting people with nature as well. So I think we've got a real opportunity here to do that and get people involved with it. It's not a scary thing.